Hello, Year 9. Welcome back to Remote Learning, Lesson 3, Practicing Writing Skills. But look, we've got a slightly different hashtag today. So we're no longer thinking out loud on paper. Are we ready? We're not going to be writing, but we are creating a bridge between your imagination and mine. Or in other words, the imagination of the reader and the imagination of the writer. Now, this is one of the key elements of good writing, that we recognize that we have to create a bridge between two imaginations. Now, the imagination, our perception, how we begin to visualize within our minds is unique to each of us. It's that moment where you formulate pictures, where you can conjure up images, senses. Now, for us, we are using our imagination all the time. We don't necessarily have to be reading for our imaginations to be working. Our imaginations are working all the time. We are highly creative, complex, beautiful creatures where our minds do this amazing processing kind of thing where suddenly we might smell something, hear something, and our imagination conjures up an image, a memory, and an idea. Now, why we love reading and why we're always going on about reading as your teachers is because we know how important it is to fire and feed and grow your beautiful imaginations. You're already designed by nature, by the way that we're born, our biology, to be able to imagine. But we recognize that your imaginations can be fed, grown by what we present them with, by, if you like, the information that we input that our brain can then process and build imaginative ideas from. So when we're writing, and when we're reading, actually, we are not we're looking to create a bridge between imaginations. The imagination of the writer, the imagination of the reader. Sometimes it might be the imagination of the speaker and the listener if somebody's a really good storyteller. But we recognize the best way to tell our story, to have people listen to us, pay attention to us, is if we can capture their imaginations. So we're going to be thinking today about creating a bridge between imaginations. I've already hinted at it. One of the ways that we can do that is by building on a foundation of reading. The best writers are often the best readers. They love to read, and the reading fuels their imagination, which then in turn fuels their writing. Now, the truth is, reading isn't the only way to feed our imaginations. We can have a junk food imaginary diet by watching and binge watching TV. We can feed our imaginations through music, things that we listen to, by walking and doing different activities, going to different places. Anything really where we immerse ourselves or put ourselves in positions and experiences for new ideas, new stimulus, new things to come in, and our imagination banks them and uses them and draws upon them and continues to grow. But for us today, I can't take you to the beach. I can't take you into a sensory kind of room where you can smell and hear different things, but I can build on a foundation of reading. So actually, although we are primarily focused on writing skills, today we're going to have a little detour. We're going to just start by actually doing a bit of guided reading, again, to inform our writing. Now, I know at the moment it might feel frustrating because I can't print this off for you. So you are going to have to trust me. But anytime you need to, you just press pause and you can reread what's on the screen. Or if you do have access to a printer, the PDFs are available to you as well. You can use the PDF that's available to you to also kind of download this text if you choose. But you can be successful in this lesson without being able to have this in your hand as a printed copy. Now, it says here, there's a little clue. You're going to record the answer to the questions. What I would love you to do is just listen. I'm going to read you this extract. You'll see immediately why I've chosen it, how it connects to our images, but I just want to begin. Now, this is from a very famous text called In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, who was an American writer. Okay, and it's an extract from a murder mystery, a murder thriller. Okay, so you're sitting comfortably. Got a little drink, maybe a tea, coffee, squash, because I'm going to tell you the beginning of this story. Are you ready? Okay. In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. The last to see them alive. The village of Holcomb stands on the high wheat plains of western Kansas, a lonesome area that other Kansans call out there. Some 70 miles east of the Colorado border, the countryside with its hard blue skies and desert clear air has an atmosphere that is rather more far west than Middle West. The local accent is barbed with a prairie twang, a ranch hand nasalness, and the men, many of them, wear narrow frontier trousers, Stetson and high-heeled boots with polished pointed toes. The land is flat, and the views are awesomely extensive. Horses, herds of cattle, a white cluster of grain elevators rising as gracefully as Greek temples are visible long before a traveller reaches them. Holcombe, too, can be seen from great distances. Not that there is much to see, simply an aimless congregation of buildings, divided in the centre by the mainline tracks of the Santa Fe Railroad, a haphazard hamlet bounded on the south by a brown stretch of the pronounced Arkansas River, on the north by a highway, Route 50, and on the east and west by prairie lands and wheat fields. After rain or when snowfalls thaw, the streets, unnamed, unshaded, unpaved, turn from the thickest dust into the direst mud. At one end of the town stands a stark old stucco structure, the roof of which supports an electric sign, "Dance," but the dancing has ceased and the advertisement has been dark for several years. Nearby is another building with an irrelevant sign, this one in flaking gold on a dirty window, Holcombe Bank. The bank closed in 1933 and its former counting rooms have been converted into apartments. It's one of the town's two apartment houses, the second being a ramshackle mansion, known, because a good part of the local school's faculty lives there, is the teacherage. But the majority of Holcombe's homes are one-story frame affairs with front porches. Down by the depot, the postmistress, a gaunt woman who wears a rawhide jacket and denims and cowboy boots, presides over a falling apart post office. The depot itself, with its peeling sulphur-coloured paint, is equally melancholy. The chief, the super chief, the El Captain go by every day, but these celebrated expresses never pause there. No passenger trains do, only an occasional freight. Now, guys, could you see the immediate link? Okay, this is a written description of a high wheat plain, a Kansas plain, like we've seen in those images. So there's going to be some lovely ideas here that we can use to inform our writing, that we can magpie and steal. But I just want to check in with you in terms of what you were reading. So can you see we've got some key questions here that I want you to respond to. Now, in a minute, you'll just press pause so you have a chance to reread the information in your own time. And I want you to write down the answers to these questions. So number one, what is the name of the village? Okay, now we were looking at nouns yesterday, so we're going to be looking for a proper noun. What is the name of the village? Where does it stand? So that it's just referring back to the village. So where does the village stand? Which adjective links to the feeling of isolation and loneliness? How far is it from Colorado? And what do you learn about the sky and air? Now, a quick disclaimer, all the answers to these questions are in the first paragraph. That's going to be our focus today, guys, okay? So, although there's some lovely descriptive elements that come after this first paragraph, we'll return to those at a later date. So, guys, press pause. When you're ready, join me back for the answers. Okay, are you ready to check your answers? So just give yourself a tick. What is the name of the village? Holcombe. So we've got that lovely proper noun Holcombe, the village of Holcombe. It's introduced right away. Now this is a lovely example, this first paragraph, of that kind of descriptive scene setting. It really is conjuring up an image of the high wheat plains. And it does that by helping us know, it locates us in a very particular place. So where does Holcombe stand? Brilliant, on the high wheat plains of western Kansas. Brilliant. Now, it begins to make choices in this paragraph, descriptive choices, because it uses an adjective that already is linking to the feeling of isolation and loneliness. So if you've got lonesome, that lovely word, in that first line, a lonesome area that other Kansans call out there, give it a tick. So actually, this idea that other Kansans, Kansan here is a reference to the other people from Kansas, like I'm Plymothian. You might consider yourself Cornish. So Kansans is a way of identifying the people from Kansas. Capital K, it's another proper noun. Now, even other Kansans, so other people that live in Kansas, call this place out there. So it's drawing attention to its loneliness, its isolation. So it then says, how far is it from Colorado? Did you get it? Brilliant, 70 miles. So some 70 miles east of the Colorado border, the countryside. Now, what do we learn about the sky and the air? And here it comes. The countryside with its hard blue skies. What an interesting way to describe the sky. Now, I've done descriptive writing all my life, ever since I taught, but actually even before that, I love to do descriptive writing. And I would never have thought when I look at the sky of hardness. I've always seen the sky as undulating and full of movement and clarity. So you get this real kind of little simple word choice that immediately jars with me and makes me think, how can the sky be hard? Another thing is it maybe because that expanse of that blue sky makes the life here hard. It makes it hot. It makes it dry. We know that by mid-September the storms come, so they have to be ready. The harvest has to be done. And there's a little hint later in paragraph 2 that you get rain and snow. So maybe this is a hard place to live, where the environment, the landscape, the weather is a hard taskmaster. It really punishes the people that live here. It's a hard blue sky. And desert clear air. So again, that adjective desert clear reminds us desert, that this environment maybe is very hot, with very little clarity, that it's going to be a really difficult landscape to live in. So guys, give yourself a tick for those. And then I'm going to give you some other questions, a slightly different approach to test your knowledge. Okay, guys, so really just a different way of assessing, checking in with you that you've understood what you've read. So this time you've got to decide if the statement is true or false. Again, only looking at that first paragraph, okay? So is this statement true or false? All of the men wear Stetsons, which is a type of cowboy hat, and high-heeled boots. Is that true or false? All of the men wear Stetsons. Brilliant. Number 2, true or false? The land is flat. Number 3, the views are narrow. You can't see a lot. Is that true or false? And finally, the grain elevators are ugly. So again, press pause. Just look, you can just write down numbers 1 to 4. Number 1, whether you think it's true or false. Number 2, true or false. 3, true or false. So it's only about a note-taking response, not big sentences. And we'll look together at our answers in a minute. Okay, guys, so let's just go through these together. Now, sometimes we rush when we read, and this sort of true and false activity is really just to slow you down and to make you think carefully. All of the men wear Stetsons and high-heeled boots. Now, actually, that's false. Why is it false? What was the phrase that proves it's false? Are you ready? The men, many of them. So can you see we've got that sentence, and it comes in halfway through, and the men, many of them. Now, that's not all of them. Yes, it's more than some, but it's not all. So that's false. Many of the men wear this lovely kind of cowboy get-up. Narrow trousers, cowboy hats, high-heeled boots with pointed toes. Brilliant. The land is flat. Yes, that's true. We can see it there at the beginning of that last sentence in the paragraph, the land is flat. Now look at this one, the views are narrow. You can't see a lot. Actually, it uses this beautiful expression. We know that it's false because it says the views are awesomely extensive. Now, 2 things here. Extensive is the bit that tells us it's big, that the views are big, but I love this word awesomely. We overuse awesome. I do. I'm terrible for it. But awesome in its original intention was to mean awe-inspiring. So it's that moment where you're looking at something and it just you're rendered speechless. It kind of robs you of words. It's so awesomely amazing, the thing that you're looking at. Okay, so we've got awesomely extensive views, which was the truth. So it's false that the views are narrow. Okay, the grain elevators are ugly. Now, to work out why this is false, we're still in this last sentence. Are we ready? It lists what we can see: horses, herds of cattle, a white cluster of grain elevators. Are we ready? Rising as gracefully as Greek temples. Now, that is a simile, rising as gracefully as Greek temples, and that adverb, gracefully, immediately, anything that's graceful, it kind of that jars with the idea of something ugly. We associate grace with beauty. So something is graceful. These grain elevators are graceful. They're not ugly. But if we wanted to extend that, it says as gracefully as Greek temples. Now, Greek temples, in terms of architecture, are often linked to the idea of something very beautiful, very graceful. So these grain elevators, now the grain elevators, we've seen them in our images, those big silver cylinders. It's saying here that these are graceful, like Greek temples. It's a beautiful simile that suggests the writer, at least, Truman Capote, finds these beautifully gorgeous, these grain elevators. Brilliant. Okay, so now we're going to just have a little language focus task. Now it says from this sentence, I want you to pick out 3 proper nouns and 2 common nouns. So if you remember, I got you to write down in your notes yesterday what proper nouns, common nouns, and abstract nouns were. And we're just testing that now. So remember, proper nouns, people, places, the names of people and places and titles. Common nouns, everyday object. I've said too much. So I'm just going to ask you to press pause. And I want you to write down 3 proper nouns and 2 common nouns in this sentence. So number 1, the village of Holcombe stands on the high wheat plains of western Kansas, a lonesome area that the other Kansans call out there. So we want 3 proper nouns and 2 common nouns. Press pause. Off you go. Okay, guys. So first of all, for the proper nouns, we're looking for capital letters. Holcombe, did you get it? Give it a tick. Kansas, tick. Kansans, tick. Now, just to show you that, if we were talking about changing it, but just to show that in practice, the village of Devonport stands on the high wheat plains of western Plymouth, a lonesome area that the other Plymothians call out there. So we can just see those proper nouns in action in a different way. So those are our 3. Give them a tick. Now, common nouns, objects, places, things. What did you get? There's more than 3, so I'll accept any. Okay, good. Village, plains, area. Actually, it is the 3. Now, a little thing before we move on. If we're looking for those, it's like 2 common nouns. That's why I knew there was more than 2. The village, a area, the wheat plains. Nouns are often, common nouns couple with determiners, the, a, an. So a way to check that you're looking at a common noun is to see, will it pair up with the or a or an? The village, the area, the plains. Yes, it does. Brilliant. Okay, so next sentence. I want you to pick out in this one, 1 proper noun, 4 common nouns, and a simile. Okay, so this is our sentence. The land is flat and the views are awesomely extensive. Horses, herds of cattle, a white cluster of grain elevators rising as gracefully as Greek temples are visible long before a traveller reaches them. So a beautiful kind of expanded sentence here. It's quite a long one. We've got lists, we've got lots of information, but find me 1 proper noun, 4 common nouns, and this simile, and just write those into your book, and we'll mark them together in a minute. Okay, so 1 proper noun. So what are we looking for, guys? We're looking for the, yes, brilliant, capital letter. So where's our capital letter? Greek. There you go, Greek temples. So Greek there is our proper noun. Common nouns. So again, we could use some of the tips. We could use looks for the words the and a to introduce some of those. Or you might have found them anyway. So we've got land, brilliant. Views, excellent. Horses, cattle, grain elevators, temples, traveller. So there's more than, many more than 4. But if you've got your 4 out of that list, give them a tick. Brilliant. And finally, I did give us a clue, I think on the last slide actually. What did you find as the simile? What's the hook? What are the 2 words that would help us? Brilliant. Like or as. Excellent. So our simile is grain elevators rising as gracefully as Greek temples. So there we've got the grain elevators being likened. They share characteristics with the Greek temples. They're graceful. They're well constructed. Brilliant. Right, next one. From this sentence, can you pick out 4 common nouns? Now this one, we are going to revise this. This might be something you did last year at Key Stage 3. We've got a lesson coming up on this. So I've given us a little clue. Can you find 4 common nouns? That's the easy bit. We've been practicing that. Can you find me what we call an appositive? Now this is a phrase that renames a noun. And it's an appositive, a phrase that renames, tells us more about the noun, that explains the postmistress more fully. So in this sentence, as I read it to you, be making a mental note or writing down your 4 common nouns. And can you find the phrase, so it's more than 1 word, okay, that's going to rename the noun of the postmistress. It's going to explain something about her more fully. Okay, so Down by the depot, the postmistress, a gaunt woman who wears a rawhide jacket in denims and cowboy boots, presides over a falling apart office. Right, so let's do our 4 common nouns. So again, we can look for the and A's, the depot, the postmistress, a woman, a jacket, denims, boots, office. So lots of common nouns. You've got your 4. Brilliant. If they're in that list, give them a tick. Now, what's the phrase that it says here renames the noun? In other words, it tells us more about the name. It rephrases the idea of the postmistress. So the postmistress, and here it comes, comma, a gaunt woman who wears a rawhide jacket and denims and cowboy boots, comma, presides over a falling apart office. Now that is what we call a really expanded A positive. And we're going to look at those in more detail because they're really good techniques for expanding descriptive writing. Now, a quick aside about the appositive, if we took it out, the sentence would still work. Ready? Down by the depot, the postmistress presides over a falling apart office. Similarly, if we take the postmistress out, the sentence should work. Down by the depot, a gaunt woman who wears a rawhide jacket and denims and cowboy boots presides over a falling apart office. Brilliant. Last bit. Now, this is all about mastering our nouns. This time, I want you to sort these nouns, okay? So, 3 groups. We want a group of common nouns, a group of proper nouns, and a group of abstract. And guys, I'm hiding that slide because I've just realised the answers are on it. Oh, we'll skip that activity, guys. Look, I've cheated. For some reason, I've got the answer slide and not the actual task slide. So I'll just quickly talk to you then. We won't do the task, but we've got some proper nouns, Kansas and America. We've got some common nouns, thresher, wheat, field, bell, sunset, building, barn, sky, horizon, path, clouds, and some abstract beauty, loneliness, danger, threat, fear. Dough. Okay, so I'm not perfect. It happens. We'll move on swiftly. So, can you remember yesterday we made our plan? Here it is. La la. We've got loneliness. We've got the sky, the yards, the house, the horizon, wheat, Kansas, and America. That's my plan. Your plan's going to be looking different, but we're going to start to bring in some of these ideas that we've been working on today. Now, I've got the order of ideas. In the beginning, my eyes drawn to the sky, then the wheat, then the focus on the house. And now we're going to be thinking about introducing sentences to begin turning our plan into description. And we're going to plan at sentence level to include the following 3 things, 3 areas of variation in our writing. We want some appositives, subordinating conjunctions, and sentence types. And we're going to work these through together. We're going to do appositives today, subordinating conjunctions and sentence types in another lesson. So in a minute, I want you to pause and I just want you to write down what an appositive actually is. So it says here, appositives, a noun, noun phrase, or noun clause placed next to another noun to rename it or explain it more fully. So we've just had a look at one of these. The postmistress was the noun, and then next to it was this beautiful noun clause, noun phrase, an extended description that explained it more fully. So let's look at these examples together. The thresher, a metal machine cut through the wheat. So can we see there's our first noun, the thresher, that's naming the object. Then we've got our appositive, a metal machine. So that is explaining and renaming the thresher, cut through the wheat. Now we can double check. If I took a metal machine out, the sentence will still make sense. The thresher cut through the wheat. Cha-ching, yes it does. If I took the thresher away, the sentence should still make sense. A metal machine cut through the wheat. Cha-ching, it's working like an appositive. So let's try this one. The sky, the blue blanket, came untucked at the edges of the horizon. Now that's actually one of my own creative sentences, and I quite like that. That's a nice one. But what's the appositive? The blue blanket. Now let's double check. The sky came untucked at the edges of the horizon. It works. We've removed the appositive, the noun phrase, blue blanket, and the sentence still makes sense. Now let's try it the other way. Let's get rid of the sky. The blue blanket came untucked at the edges of the horizon. So, appositives, a noun, noun phrase, or noun clause placed next to another noun to rename it or explain it more fully. And from a descriptive point of view, they're really beautiful ways to create creativity and links to imagination. They're also a really good way to write more. Sometimes as creative writers, we're always trying to write more. You need to keep the idea going. You need to expand your description. Appositives enable us to do that. So press pause here and just write down into your book what an appositive is. Okay, so appositives, then you've written down that they're a noun phrase, or a noun clause placed next to another noun to rename it or explain it more fully. But there are some top tips to help us and test to make sure we are identifying appositives but also using them correctly. Appositives begin with a determiner, a, an, or the. So like we saw in the examples, they begin with an a, an, or the. Appositives can begin with adjectives. So it can begin with a descriptive word like blue, cold, hard. It can begin with an adjective. But appositives do not, now this is really important, do not begin with who, that, which, or whose. Now this is the biggest area where we get stuck, because we can actually use what we call embedded clauses that tell us more about a noun, but that is not an appositive. It's an embedded clause, it's a relative clause, it's doing a different job. So if you're looking at a sentence or a series of sentences, and I'm saying which is the appositive, which isn't, if it begins with a who, that, which, or whose, it is not an appositive. Okay, now like we've just seen, the sentence still makes sense without the appositive, and the appositive can replace the noun in the sentence, so it still makes sense. So these are our 5 top tips and tests for the appositive. So again, just to illustrate it with our example sentences. So the thresher, there we go, a metal machine cut through the wheat. So there's what we call the determiner. Okay, if we take away the thresher, a metal machine cut through the wheat, it still works. The sky, the blue blanket, came untucked at the edges of the horizon. Okay, so we've got tick, 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 the blue blanket came untucked at the edges of the horizon. So let's see. Again, here we've got an example. The sun set, a golden ball began to sink. Now, here we go. We've got the sunset. There's our little comma, a little sign that something's being introduced or embedded. Now, to decide why it's an impositive, so we've got our determiner. Okay, so far, a golden ball began to sink. Now, we could say the sunset began to sink. We could say a golden ball began to sink. And both options work. Now, let's look at this one. Gathering in the east, the clouds, sinister grey vapours, floated across the sky. Now, this one's a little bit tricky, but it's still the appositive. So the first thing to do is think, well, what is the noun that's being replaced? So let's have a look then. Gathering in the east, the clouds. So there's our noun. And here it is being renamed. Sinister grey vapours floated across the sky. Now remember, on our top tips, it said that you could begin with an adjective. So although it doesn't have the, or a, it does have that adjective. So could this be an appositive? Well, the next check is, let's get rid of clouds. So gathering in the east, sinister grey vapours floated across the sky. This works. Gathering in the east, the clouds floated across the sky. So these are 2 examples of appositives. Now let's look at these 2 non-examples. The sunset, which was a golden ball, began to sink. Now on our top tips, it said appositives do not begin with certain keywords, and which is one of them. And just to show you why it's not an appositive, remember we said an appositive should be able to replace the noun, so we should get rid of sunset and the sentence will work if it's an appositive. So, which was a golden ball began to sink. If you get rid of sunset, that does not work. Okay, so it cannot be an appositive. Now let's have a look at this one. Gathering in the east, the clouds of sinister grey vapours floated across the sky. Now this is very similar except for one difference, and this difference makes the difference between an appositive and a noun phrase. Gathering in the east, the clouds of sinister grey vapours floated across the sky, and it's using this little word of. So these are 2 non-examples of appositives, and here are examples of the appositives. So what are we going to do to practice it? Well, here you go. You've got to find the appositives. So it says here, look at the following 5 sentences. 3 are examples of appositives and 2 aren't. So which ones are examples of appositives? Which 3? Which ones aren't? So you're going to pause the screen and you're going to decide which ones are the appositives and which ones aren't. So the Kansas wheat plains, several miles of golden stalks, unfurled across the horizon. The thresher cutting through the wheat was a green, well-oiled machine. A house, a small and broken building that was weathered and worn, stood on the edge of the plain. The sun, despite breaking a small hole in the clouds, couldn't last. Breaking a small hole in the clouds, the sun, a star of burning gas, couldn't last. So, if you need to, flick back to your list of top tips, come back to look at this. Which ones are our positives and which ones aren't? And there are 3 that are and 2 that aren't. Okay, so let's look at our answers. Ta-da! Okay, so if they're in blue, they are a positive. So if you said number 1, you are correct. Let's look at it. The Kansas wheat plains unfurled across the horizon. Several miles of golden stalks unfurled across the horizon. Tick, tick, tick. It's beginning with the adjective several. We said that positives can do that. Brilliant. The thresher cutting through the wheat was a green, well-oiled machine. So actually cutting through the wheat, nope, that's a verb phrase. It's telling us what it's doing. It's not renaming it. So that is a that is not a positive. Okay, number 3, the house, a small and broken building that was weathered and worn, stood on the edge of the plain. The house stood on the edge of the plain. A small and broken building that was weathered and worn stood on the edge of the plain. Cha-ching, it isn't a positive. Now, if we look at number 4, the sun couldn't last. So we can take that embedded clause out and the sentence works. The sun couldn't last. But if we took the sun out, it doesn't make sense. Despite breaking a small hole in the clouds couldn't last. So no. And finally, breaking a small hole in the clouds, the sun, a star of burning gas. There's our determiner A, a star of burning gas, couldn't last. And if we take it out, the sentence still works. And if we take the word the sun out, it still works. Breaking a small hole in the clouds, the star of burning gas couldn't last. All right, my darlings. So those are our correct ones. Now, to again secure this, we've got a matching activity. So here are some nouns. And I want you to decide which is the best appositive to explain, rename, or extend our noun. So sky, the wheat, the horizon, the sun, the clouds. We've got this lovely list of nouns. All of these were my 5 from my plan. So I'm thinking about my writing plan. I'm using my ideas. Now over here, a cereal grain. So is that in a positive that renames the sky, the wheat, the horizon, the sun, or the clouds? Which would you match that with, in other words? Ice crystals floating in the sky. So which noun does that rename or explain? A great hollow dome above. Where would you match that one to? A line that separates the earth and sky. The star around which the earth orbits. So your job now is to just write out the noun and the appositive you would match it to. Okay, off you go. Right, guys, let's see if you were right. So the sky is a great hollow dome above. Wheat, a cereal grain. Brilliant. Give yourself a tick if you're right. The horizon is a line that separates the earth and sky. The sun, the star around which the earth orbits. And the clouds, ice crystals floating in the sky. So again, this is a nice way when you're planning and extending your plan for each of your nouns. Could you create an appositive to go with them? And that's what we're going to end with today, okay? So we're now going to craft 3 sentences using appositives. So remember your plan. You've already got on it a list of nouns and a summary of the beginning, the next, ready to go. So what I want you to do now in your books as our final activity, okay, is just to list the nouns from your picture, from your own idea, and I want you to turn it into an appositive sentence. Now, guys, so I might say the sky, a dome above the earth, and I might create my sentence over here. The sky, comma, a vast dome above the earth. Hung overhead. Sorry, I was distracted there. My cat came up and was about to jump on my computer and I was trying to keep him off. Okay, so number 2, pick another noun off your plan. So I had sky, didn't I? So then I'm going to turn that into an appositive sentence. The sky, comma, a blue blanket untucked at the edges, expanded above. So we're turning it into a complete sentence though, so it's not just the appositive. To turn it into a sentence, we're going to attach it and make it a complete idea. So your last activity today, okay, is to create 5 appositive sentences. I said 3, didn't I? So 3, if you're close to your hour's work. 5 if you've been working through more quickly. And what I should see in your books then is a list of appositive sentences where you've taken 5 nouns from your plan, like I have here. Now, I haven't created appositive sentences. These are appositives. So your final job is to make it a complete idea. Make it do something. So the sky, a great hollow dome above. Now my dog's attacking my cat. That doesn't make it a complete sentence. So you turn it into a complete sentence. Okay? So your final activity, now this is one that would be really nice to kind of like share and send to your teachers, is a list of 5 appositive sentences where we can see you've taken 5 nouns from your plan and you've turned them into 5 sentences that use appositives. Okay, my darlings, thank you for listening and working so hard today. Okay, here is an example. So if doing it like the table doesn't work for you, here's an example, okay? This is mine. I've gone from my 5 to my 3 sentences. So I did say goodbye. I forgot about this example, but you might want to see it, okay? So in the beginning, my eye is drawn to the expanse of the sky, a blue blanket tucked in tight against the horizon. Next, my eye goes to the wheat, a swathe of golden cereal that ripples like the sea. In the end, the house, a worn and weathered building, is cast adrift in the sea. So your task, okay, if it's easier to do it this way, oh, I've gone back too far, it's just to copy and complete using a positive. So for your image, in the beginning, my eye is drawn to, tell me something your eye is drawn to in your image and describe it using your positive. Next, my eye goes to, choose something from your image and describe it using a positive. And in the end. All right, my lovelies. So now it really is the end of the lesson. So you should have 3 sentences crafted to use the appositives. And I will look forward to seeing those sentences and working with you tomorrow.